Asgard was now stronger than ever, with high walls surrounding the magnificent kingdom of gods. And so as peace and security ensued, Odin called upon his blood brother Loki and took him for a stroll in Midgard. What follows is something only Loki could cause and manage, for welcome to this video where we explore the resourceful nature of Loki and find out what makes the Norse gods immortal. Upon their travel to the world of men, Odin and Loki passed the realm of Midgard and found themselves on the outskirts of Jotunheim. A long stroll it was, for it made the two gods tiresome and of course very hungry. But this place they stumbled upon was barren and lifeless, with no animals or trees nearby. Just a cold gust of wind that would lessen their morale with every passing minute. As they looked around, they eventually found a herd of cattle, and Loki killed a bull and set it on a spit, ready to be cooked as a well-deserved meal. But their joy and hunger would have to wait, as after hours and hours of cooking on a spit, the meat would never get cooked. Odin realized the presence of an enchantment and informed Loki that they should leave the place. But Loki would have none of that. He grew more hungry and restless, and eventually his pride took over when he said he would not leave until his belly becomes full. Odin, although hungry, was always wise and left Jotunheim for Asgard. Meanwhile, Loki stayed back, and it was not until dawn that he spotted a giant eagle up in the sky. The eagle approached him very quickly, and Loki realized it was the largest one he had ever seen. The eagle spoke to Loki and told him that he could cook the meat if he were allowed a share of it. To this Loki agreed, and eagle soared in the sky and with a strong gust of his wing cooked the meat in a matter of minutes. Eagle now asked for his share and started to devour the meat until there was none left. Loki's anger grew, and upon realizing all of his meat had gone, struck the giant eagle with the stick on which the meat was being cooked. But his anger soon turned to surprise, as the eagle did not feel any pain. The stick was stuck in his breast, and with the blink of an eye, the eagle soared in the sky and took Loki with him. Loki was mortified, as the eagle announced that he was called Thjossi the giant, and he was the brother of the giant who built the wall around Asgard. Eagle took Loki to a cavern deep in Jotunheim and transformed himself into a giant and told him that Loki was now his prisoner and would only be freed if his ransom was paid. The ransom he asked for was greater than Loki could imagine, for he wanted the apples of Iduna. Loki, upon rejecting his demands a few times, gave up eventually and swore that he would bring her back to him if he'd be let go. Loki returned home, tired, miserable and angry, and was laughed at by the gods for his poor condition, but did not tell them where or with whom he was. And after their meal and drink, the gods and Loki would make their way to the great garden in Asgard where Iduna lived in a golden palace. Iduna was the wife of the god Bragi and cared after an apple tree that bore the shiniest apple in all the 9 realms. These apples would bestow the gift of immortality upon whoever would consume them. Only Iduna could care for them and grow them, and the immortality would only be granted if they were willingly given by Iduna and Iduna alone. She would spend her every day caring for these apples and listening to the never-ending stories told by her husband Bragi, for she had never left the confines of Asgard, and this was and will have always been the way of things. But Loki, half enraged by the gods for mocking him and half bound by the promise he made to the giant, would speak to the kind and simple-hearted Iduna after the gods had left the garden. He addressed her and protested that her apples have lost their shine as of late, and that he had seen better apples growing just outside the walls of Asgard. The simple and beautiful Iduna was tricked by Loki, and he convinced her to see these apples outside the walls of Asgard. And so for the first time in all of time, Iduna left her garden and went looking for these apples. But upon approaching the place, she was told by Loki she saw nothing but heard a strong gust of wind. It was the giant Thjossi, transformed as an eagle, who took her away to Jotunheim and hid her in a cavern not known to anyone but his folk. The simple and kind Iduna asked Thjossi why she had been brought here, and the giant snatched the apples Iduna was carrying with the hope to eat them and gain immortality. But to the giant's dismay, apples turned to ashes, as they were not given willingly to him by Iduna. And so he spoke to her and demanded that she would give him the apples herself, but faithful Iduna declined, and said she would never do that, as the apples were meant for the gods alone. Thjasse would not accept this, and kept her as a prisoner, and told her that she would stay here until she gives him the apples. Back in Asgard, the gods would visit the garden every day, but would find no sign of Iduna and her apples. Without the apples, gods grew weary, tiresome, and the spark of their eyes would begin to fade. Odin would take action and send his most trusted scouts, the two ravens, Hugin and Munin, to all the corners of 9 realms, in search of Iduna. The ravens returned and told Loki all about the giant Thjasse, Iduna, and how Loki was responsible for all of this. This news was shared with every god, and there was an uproar in Asgard. Thor the mightiest grew angry and would grab Loki to threaten him and told him to make everything right again. Loki's shame was now seen and felt by all, and he promised to make it all right, promised like he did last time with Thjasse's brother. He went to Frigga, Odin's wife, and borrowed her feathered dress that would transform him into a falcon. He then flew to Jotunheim and allowed himself to be captured by Thjasse's daughter named Skadi. This would be the first time Skadi is introduced in Norse myths, but it wouldn't be the last. She took Loki, who was disguised as a falcon, to see Iduna in her prison, while Loki flew high in the sky and escaped. He then came back when no one was guarding her prison and spoke to Iduna and promised to save her. He then transformed Iduna into a small sparrow using his trickery and magic, and both flew from the cavern. Thjasse then spotted the empty cage and transformed into the giant eagle and chased after them. Odin and the other gods could now see that a falcon and a sparrow were being chased by a giant eagle from his great castle in Hlidskjalf. Gods were, although very weak, were still very wise and would put up huge fires outside the boundaries of Asgard. Huge pillars of flame would erupt, and Loki knew that the gods were helping him and Iduna escape from Thjasse. He flew towards the fire along with Iduna, but the giant eagle could not go through the huge columns of fire. And so Iduna was rescued by Loki, and everything would go back to normal again. The gods would gain their youth, and Iduna was back in her garden tending to her apples. But the seeds of mistrust were finally sown in the hearts of gods towards Loki. So join me next time when we talk about the next tale that would shape the great war to come. Until then, farewell.